Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it may be when you're watching this. Today, we're taking a look at the design process and UI styling of ToneControl. My name is Sean Fairchild. Let's get into it. All right, this was a project that was near and dear to my heart as a musician, as an electric bass player, and having a prior career as a professional bassist. I've always been into technology, and I have reviewed bass technology and guitar technology for a magazine for a number of years. And one of the things that I think is kind of sorely lacking in that space is any kind of control that we see with our phones these days, with mobile devices, over all kinds of other products and audio products all around us. The whole market has not made its way into electric instruments. So the concept here, which is a real concept, I was working with partners that I have in the musical instruments industry space, the MI industry, was to develop a modular piece of electronics that could mate with existing electronics that are in a guitar and a bass. By the way, guitar electronics largely unchanged for almost a century. They use radio era components that just really have not undergone much change. So the idea was to create something that complements, that interfaces with those components, and then allows for greater control through the use of an app. So really, the app is going to be the essential user experience of this product, since the product itself is installed internally. This is the final design. This is a picture of the final design here of the pickup selection screen, the pickup modification screen. So you can adjust what's happening with individual coils in individual pickups and how they are combined. So P stands for parallel, S is series, parallel or series, different coils on or off. You can control the blend between pickups, things that you would be able to do via toggle switches or controls on the instrument face traditionally. But this allows you the opportunity to save and recall presets. I adopted this intro, verse, bridge, chorus formatting here for the case study, obviously to go along with the musical context here. So just describing in the verse basically what I have been laying out, that this whole group of musicians, this whole group of people has been largely underserved for a long time, while we see what is going on around us in terms of, what we can do with our smart speaker or our TV, all kinds of devices all around us. For some reason, that has kind of all circumnavigated the group of electric musicians. So to best serve the end users, it was determined that native applications were needed for both iOS and Android devices for the greatest degree of inclusion and strongest marketplace position. The marketplace is almost 50-50 in the US between iOS and Android. I think it's about 56% iOS. However, globally, it's about 80% Android, or 78% maybe the last time I checked. So to democratize this, to open it up to as many people as possible, a native app for both platforms was certainly needed. When people are going to be using it, that's the great part. Anytime that you are around your instrument and you have your mobile device with you, you might be using this. So you could be setting up an instrument for a future recording. You could be just changing tones in your bedroom. You could be doing it live while you're on stage. A lot of musicians, certainly I used to do this, use a tablet that's mounted on a mic stand on stage. So you could have something like that and be making digital changes of your analog audio routing scenario in real time. There is not another product like this. Nothing exists like ToneControl. So what I did was jumped into apps that I had experience with and that I discovered that used similar design language, that used these sliders. You can see these sliders here. These continuous sliders that are horizontal, EQ sliders that are vertical. My first iteration design didn't have a distinction between vertical and horizontal sliders, and I after seeing this app, the Auto Slowdowner app, I realized, oh, of course, people are used to seeing EQ sliders, graphic EQ. That makes a ton of sense. Let's have those go vertical. You can definitely see a lot of the inspiration for the sort of hexagonal language that I used from the Boss GX10. The user flow was determined after working with a small group of testers that were my original sort of crew that I worked with to determine what would be necessary, what would be important to have, and what would be the most useful. So working quickly at the beginning in the rapid prototype stage, I like to work with pen and paper. So just quickly getting out a user flow and then these lo-fi wireframes that followed. And you'll be able to see quite a bit of evolution here in the wireframes themselves. And now moving on to the different platforms using the different design languages of material design and the human interface guidelines for Android and iOS respectively. Here are some of the mid-grade ideas of what was going on. These arrows in testing got confused for back operations, despite there being a back chevron on iOS, and the intentional back gesture, the swipe from the side of the screen gesture, to be used on Android. So to disambiguate that, in a later revision, I added an undo label and kind of made that more obvious. There's a fun menu animation that happens here with these guys. User interaction notation for developers. I wanted to make sure that there was as little ambiguity as possible in what should do what. That these radio buttons were single selection, these are toggles obviously, that the sliders could be dragged and slid in one direction or another. So this was kind of a nice step to do that hopefully prevents headaches down the line. And the chorus. So the payoff, the big reveal. This is what it's all about. These are the final designs for Android that we're looking at here. I worked with AI image generation so as not to step on any toes, either of my partners in the MI space or brands who feel like their instrument was being singled out or not singled out. So this is actually the product of, I don't know, maybe 30 prompts going back and forth with ChatGPT to develop something that I had in mind, but it took a while to get there. So I really like this splash screen. And then that's darkened in the background on every other screen except for the menu screen, which is an animation that kind of comes up like a modal. Again, you see the ability here to name presets, to save presets, to load presets. One of the additional later stage changes was to change the color coding and the numbering here of the instrument presets from the color coding and the alphanumeric qualities here of the EQ presets. And tone share is a fun idea that is basically a separate platform that allows users of this app to share their specific combinations and the things that they really enjoy with their peer group. Biometric login fingerprint scanner for Android, which is going to be a Face ID for iOS. So here are the iOS designs. I tried to keep everything as similar as possible to not develop kind of two classes of users. Here you can see that undo function that I mentioned earlier. Everything largely the same, but using more familiar iOS design language in terms of the size and the shape of the components that you interact with on screen. And there's our little Face ID biometric guy. All right, so that was a very quick walk through ToneControl. I realize I went pretty quickly, but if you have any questions, I would love to hear them. Leave them in the comments, get in touch with me. Here's my contact info. I would love to hear what you have to say and potentially work on something with you in the future. Thank you very much for your time.